This is the obligatory end of a great mission well done, end of a story arc, Straw Hats, let's party, and then go into a sappy flashback.
One Piece, chapter 486, Piano.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, and I'm here to bring you another review on the awesome and climactic, fucking just beautifully done tale of One Piece. Now, our last chapter, of course, really was the Zoro chapter, as I like to say. In part, Sanji, too, but I think Zoro, because he was the one that first went and stepped up and offered his head in exchange for their lives, the rest of their lives, to the tyrant Kuma. And anyway, the chapter wound up actually ending off with Kuma, of course, had left. Everyone else woke up, and Zoro, we don't know how much of that actual pain and suffering he wound up taking in, of Luffy's, but he was standing there just ragged, looking half dead, and then he said nothing at all, or nothing happened. So that's how the chapter left off, right? The chapter actually picks up, and I kind of like this. It was nice. It's Absalom and it's Dr. Hogback actually escaping under kind of cover of this like cloaked ship that they have, escaping Thriller Bark. And first they're discussing about how they couldn't find Perona. They looked everywhere for. I'm sure that's going to wrap around, and we're going to see the aftermath of that at some point later on. At least I'm hoping so, because I liked her. I thought she was a good character. But she was the one, obviously, that Kuma wound up making disappear. I don't know where or why or how or when or whatever, but eventually we'll get around to that. But they do mention that they couldn't find her. They looked everywhere. It is what it is type of situation. So what they wind up talking about and chattering back and forth about is the fact that Kuma, the tyrant Kuma, was there to pass on the information that, of course, Blackbeard had been promoted or had been brought in as one of the seven warlords, had taken Crocodile's spot. But that wasn't the information. That wasn't the real information of what was going on, right? The last we left Blackbeard and Ace, they were fighting, of course, on Banaro Island, right? And there was just this huge cataclysmic release of power of light and dark and everything, and that's just how it was left. We had no idea what was going on. If somebody hurt somebody, somebody killed somebody, somebody captured somebody, well, bingo! Now we find out in kind of a roundabout way. I'm sure it'll be fleshed out a little bit more in the coming chapters, but Ace has been captured and is awaiting his execution. The world government has him in the prison of Impel Down. Now, Impel Down was mentioned back in Eni's lobby. When you go through the gates of justice, you can either go to naval headquarters or you can go to the underwater, inescapable, like this world's version of Alcatraz type prison of Impel Down. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the situation is. I just know that for me, that pretty much tied up things with Blackbeard and Ace. Blackbeard has now been promoted to a Shichibukai, to one of the seven warlords, of course, and Ace has been captured and is awaiting his execution. So I can only presume that whatever the outcome of their fight was, it wound up being Ace was somehow able to be restrained and actually brought in, and Blackbeard said, hey, look what I got here. Promote me up to one of the warlords. So that, even though it was just a page or two, for me, that was the most important information that happened in the entirety of the chapter. Everything after that is secondary in the sense that it's the end of the arc, and what do we do as the Straw Hat Gang, likes to do? We have a little party. We celebrate. Everybody's feeling good. Luffy's feeling exceptionally good, and we know why he's feeling exceptionally good. Zoro is on death's doorstep, okay? So Zoro is very much, he's like, Chopper said when they found him, he was like a breath away from dying, okay? Now, all we actually saw him take in was that little taste of the pain and anguish that Luffy had suffered. What that goes to show you is that as strong as Zoro is, even though he was weakened and everything else, that even just a little bit of what Luffy takes in on a regular basis from the fights and stuff like that he's in is just exponentially larger for other people, even someone as strong as Zoro. That's what I took from that. But anyway, what we do wind up finding out is because Luffy wants to know what happened, right? And there's a couple of guys who are like, we saw it all, we saw it all. And Sanji grabs him and pulls him into an alley and says, hey, what happened after I got knocked out? And they're like, hey, your friend over there, he went and the tyrant extracted all the suffering, all the pain, the hurt from Luffy. He's like, what the pain? He's like, oh, they said it was all the suffering. And then he said, here, I'll give you a taste. And he just gave him a little bit. And Zoro, when your friend took that in, he like screamed out in agony and pain. And then they said, that's it. So whether that's it or not, I don't know. I was assuming that maybe Kuma had a lot of respect for Zoro not backing down at all, even after he went and had that taste of it, that Kuma just kind of let the rest slide and let it go. Or maybe he did hit him with it, I don't know. But the way it's explained to Sanji is that they saw what happened, and Zoro, although he was a big man about it and everything like that, that he took that in and then that was it. There was nothing else that happened, and then Kuma just decided to leave. And that makes sense because then Zoro said nothing happened. Because in his mind, it didn't. He didn't take his head like was offered, and he didn't go and give him all that pain and suffering that was supposed to kill him anyway. But just that little bit seems to put him right on death's doorstep. And I could be wrong. Maybe we find out later on down the road that he actually did take all that in, and if he did, that's even more impressive. And I would it would bring my respect level for Zoro from here up to here, you know, which is just completely off the screen, off the charts, right? So we get that whole deal with Zoro and everything, and the nice thing what I liked about Sanji, and regardless of what his relationship is with Zoro, they kind of have this love-hate relationship where they sort of grudgingly, like, they admire each other, but they don't ever want to admit it, you know what I mean? They're sort of like frenemies, but anyways, Sanji goes and tells these two, listen, everybody's all right, that's all that matters. I don't want you telling anybody else, or I'll kick the crap out of you. And they're like, why? He said, listen, do you really think that Luffy wants to go and have that burden on him? He didn't ask for that pain and suffering to be taken from him. Do you really want him to know that his friend is dying and suffering and in all this pain at his expense because it was taken from him? And do you really want him to feel like that, like he owes him? And do you really want everybody else to know? Zoro didn't do it for anybody's pity. He did it because it was the only thing to do. It was the right thing to do. You know what I mean? So I really like that too, and that showed a lot of, I think that showed a lot for Sanji as well. And that, you know, again, upper echelon as far as my respect level for Sanji. So they go on, everybody's partying, everybody's having a good time. You know, there's a little exchange between Lola and Nami, where Lola, obviously it was her shadow that was inside the big boar pig thing. And, of course, her and Nami, you know, the shadow of that and that reanimated corpse and her had, you know, become friends. So it's kind of cool because Nami winds up explaining to Lola the whole deal about how, like, hey, you know, even though we haven't formerly met, we did. You kind of saved me. You helped me from Absalom. Nami actually gives up some of the treasure. Because, mind you, all the treasure and food that Perona was having all her underlings or zombies store on the ship to take the 1,000 something is still there. So they're good to go with that, right? So everybody else is pretty much just doing their deal, hanging out, trying to heal up and have a good time and party and have fun, right? And really at the end of the chapter, Brook winds up going and jumping on the piano and starts going to belt out a tune. Luffy's over there talking to him, and he's like, hey, you're going to join us, right? Hey, you're a pirate, right? Hey, you don't have any more. So Brook's like, well, I have something that I have to do, unfortunately, in this and that. And then it was kind of cool. It was very touching at the end of the chapter because Luffy lets the cat out of the bag that, you know, certainly he knows about Laboon, about his situation, thought it was really cool. He met Laboon. Laboon's doing well, blah, 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 you know. So it was very neat to go and to see that interaction with them. I also like how Sanji winds up talking to Brook a little bit, and Brook says, I saw what happened as well. And, you know, you and Zoro, you guys are like next level, man, you know. And then Sanji, what I like, man, is he doesn't try to go and take any credit for anything. He says, no. Zoro is the one that deserves the credit for that. You know, I was just the idiot that followed along. And he says, no, you were both willing to die, and that's the point. You were both willing to make the sacrifice. And that's what I tried to illustrate in my review for the last chapter, is they were both willing to make that sacrifice. Doesn't matter who decided to do it first. They were both willing to give up their lives unconditionally to let the crew live. So thought it was very cool. But anyway, as you know, Brook gets going with his tune and everything, and Luffy's telling him more and more about Laboon and their encounter with him, he starts to go and remember back 50 years ago when they first entered the Grand Line, when they met Laboon. He was only about the size of a small boat at the time, and Laboon was pretty much separated from his family, lost from his other pod of whales, and him and his crew were jamming, man. They were playing some music for Laboon. You know, and obviously it brings back some good fond memories for him, because before you know it, Brook's just like teared up, he's crying, and that's actually how the chapter ends, with him being in this flashback, kind of, you know, lapsing in and out of that, like, you know, thinking about it in his head, and really just a very touching end to a chapter. So, and kind of wrapping up the arc over here. So, my chapter question for you though, brothers and sisters, are: what is your thoughts on Ace now being taken to and awaiting execution at Impel Down? Luffy wants to get to the New World and move forward, but it seems like he's going to have to wind up going back and maybe storming what's left of Enies Lobby and the Gates of Justice again to go and rescue his brother. I mean, especially once he finds out about this, if and when. I hope he does. But what are your thoughts on that, and just kind of, do you think it was the high point or the revelation of the chapter? You know, and then as well, if you want to add anything about Zoro, if I maybe misunderstood something about how much of Luffy's pain and anguish he actually took in, any explanation on that would certainly be much appreciated as well. So, leave your answer to those questions in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation. Thanks for watching. Remember to follow me over on the Facebook and the Twitter too.